announcements. Jim Miller has got, he's going to do our little raffle for the, oh, you're not doing it yet.
So the Little is going to have another showing of the 46er movie next Wednesday. It's already sold out. It's already, is this better? Can you hear me now? So the Little is going to have another showing of the 46er movie next Wednesday. It's already sold out. However, we have 5 pairs of tickets to give out in a free raffle. So if anybody would like to enter the raffle, I have tickets. Raise your hand, and when we go through the announcements, I'll pass them out. And then just before the presentation, we'll draw the 5 winners for a pair of tickets to the movie for next week.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, just a couple of business things. By the way, my name is Reinhard Solmar. I'm the chair of the Genesee Valley chapter, so welcome. We do have emergency exits. The signs are there. And I would also ask that you turn off your cell phone so we're not interrupting our program speaker tonight, which reminds me I better do the same thing. Do we have any first-time visitors here tonight? First time to a meeting? Ah, yes. Carson, raise your hand. Welcome. Anybody else? Also, if you're, we have a hearing loop set up here. It's outlined by this blue tape. If you have a T-coil in your hearing aids, yes, that's the term, hearing aids. Thank you, Tom. You'll be able to pick up the sound. Tom's thing's working. If you don't have a T-coil in your hearing aid, we have headsets available. Okay, so it's right here in this rectangular area where the blue tape is on the floor. Do we have any folks that have accomplished some new milestones? I know for a fact we have a couple people, I think, in our audience. Where did Jeff go? Jeff, new 46er. Jeff, stand up. Any other new milestones? Karen. Okay. Another 46er. Okay. Anybody else? Anybody? Gail. Yes. Who's been on the Erie Canal, led by Dave and Jill Martin? How many folks have been on that trip?
24 people were on that trip. They didn't all do all the segments.
Who here in the audience participated on that historic ride along the Erie Canal? Okay, quite a few of you. That's great. That's great. So, how many of you made it to the showing of the 46ers film at the Little on September 24th? A few of you? Wasn't it a great movie? Right? Yeah, so very good. Very good. Amy, as we said, Jim's going to do a little raffle a little bit later on. You're not ready for that yet, right, Jim?
What's that video who still wants a ticket? Anybody want to do that? Last chance. All right.
Hey, Reinhard?
Yeah. Okay, probably, yeah, okay. Yeah. Does anybody else have some champion announcements? Well, Bill, while Jim is doing the raffle tickets, Jackson, you want to do your thing with your announcement?
Thing.
Okay. Jackson, you're disappointing me. Usually you're ready.
I'm ready, but... Okay. Sorry, Reinhard. I had to get my cue. Hi, everybody! Hi. Well, you are here on a very special night. For the first time ever, the bookstore will be taking orders for the ADK calendars for 2026. That way, you are guaranteed to get the one calendar, or more than one, if you choose, that you are hoping to have for next year, regardless of which program you are able to attend over the next couple of months. Because I'm going to take orders tonight. That way, I will
Didn't you take orders last month?
No, I did not. Sorry, Larry, I did not. So, thank you all, and see me at the end of tonight's program at the bookstore table if you want to place an order for one or more calendars. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, Jim, we ready for the We've already drawn the tickets. Okay, all right.
All right, so I'm gonna call out the numbers. 342011.
Sarah, okay.
342003. All right. 342020.
020.
Come on over. Come on over.
All right.
Don't be shy.
342017.
Karen, okay.
342009.
009, Bill, okay.
All right, Bill, join us.
All right, last one. 342015.
Okay, Jackson, are we doing a picture opportunity of our winners here?
Katie has asked for a photo.
Okay.
It's like a losing line. Oh my God. All right, thank you.
Okay, does anybody else from the executive committee have any announcements? No? Sarah? Good? Everybody? Dave, you're good? Okay. With that, I'd like to ask our program chair, Katie Kuzik, to come up here. She's going to introduce our presenter for the evening. Katie?
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Can you hear me okay? Before I introduce our very special guest tonight, I just want to let you know about the presentation for November. We'll be welcoming Joe Dady from Hamlets to Huts, and he's going to do a film screening of the Voice of the Hudson documentary. So please come back in November for that. Okay, so thanks for coming. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce tonight's presenter, who is my daughter, Aurora Kuzak. Aurora will speak on the wildlife of remote ornithology. Aurora describes her work with endangered birds in remote locations as cold, wet, muddy, and windy. I describe her work as adventurous, fascinating, spectacular, and, at least for me, as her mother, anxiety-inducing. There were fires, an earthquake, gale force winds, cliffs, and incredible distances, just to name a few. But she loves what she does and is spreading her wings, so to speak. You get it? Thank you. Thank you. To sum it all up, I describe my daughter as bright, creative, determined, and tenacious, as you will soon see for yourself. Please give a warm welcome to Aurora.
Hi. Could we dim the light, please? If that's cool, so everybody can see. Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Aurora, and thank you so much to my mom for the introduction, and for the Genesee Valley chapter of the ADK Mountain Club for having me tonight. I'm super excited to talk about my work and some of the places I have been over the last couple years. Today I will be talking about my bird research in some of the remote places on Earth, from all the way on the Aleutian chain to southern Patagonia. Yeah, and if we could keep all questions for the end, that would be great. So, I'm a wildlife biologist who has dedicated the last 3 years to working with wildlife that are difficult to study, endangered or species of concern, and are unique in their life histories. I obtained my bachelor's at Bard College and then my master's at Duke University in the environmental sciences. I first learned about ornithology as a career in undergrad through several courses and internships, and then in graduate school I continued my interest in ornithology, working in museums preparing avian specimens. I also had the opportunity to conduct field work in the Dry Tortugas National Park, working with city terns. And then I also studied whales and seabirds and salamanders and all that good stuff, as well as preparing my technical skills. My education was very interdisciplinary, which allowed me to learn a very good variety of skills. So, my first study site, I worked on Maui in Hawaii. After graduate school, I was pretty set on gaining remote field experiences. Hawaii had been on my radar since undergrad, and I worked with these Hawaiian birds. On the top here, let me see if I can use the laser pointer. Oh, there you go. So on the top here, we have the kiwi-kiu. It's one of the most endangered birds in the world. There's only like 300 individuals left. And then we have the Hawaii amakihi, and then we have the apapane, the iipi, and then the alala, or the Hawaiian crow. And these are all Hawaiian names, and I wanted to say them to just honor Hawaiian culture. And so I learned about these birds a while ago during my undergrad, and as I said before, these are critically endangered and very much in decline. These species are a result of years of extreme geographic isolation and evolution from an ancestor that came over to the island of Kauai hundreds of thousands of years ago. And they evolved to like particular plants that evolved with them to survive over time. And Hawaii houses very unique plants and animals, as you can probably see here. And it is known as the extinction capital of the world. It is also a place where you're finding species that are most likely declining due to climate change, destruction of natural forests, and really mostly invasive species like feral cats, mongooses, rats, mice, all that stuff. So while you might think of Hawaii as pretty beaches and stuff like that, I think of wet rainforests that are up in the mountains. And so while I'm not going to focus on a lot of cultural practices, I do want to acknowledge the strong cultural beliefs of the native Hawaiians, which make protecting their species and their land all the more important. So when I was in Hawaii, I was kind of a jack of all trades in this role. I planned for the release of these captively bred crows up on the top in Hawaii. So these birds are essentially extinct in nature, but then they, about 100 or so are in captive breeding facilities, and then they would release them back into the wild. So I was helping prepare a lot of that. And then I also captured and banded honey creepers, and honey creepers are forest birds, were the very colorful birds on the last slide. And if anybody doesn't really know what banding is, it's a scientific tool that a lot of researchers use. And we capture these birds in what we call mist nets, which is, you can kind of see, it's kind of hidden, but it's a net, and birds will fly in, and we usually use sound playbacks of bird calls, and they fly into the net, they get stuck, and we take them out, and we put a unique 9-digit band on their legs, and these can usually be metallic, but sometimes they're color bands, which make them easier to see in the wild. So that's a lot of what I did out there. So over time, I also wrote reports and analyzed data, the fun stuff, logistically planned for field outings, and so much more. And I didn't really have any pictures of what the really muddy parts of Hawaii look like, but there's a nice bridge that was there, but that wasn't a normal day-to-day. I kind of only took pictures when it was nice outside. So a lot of these field sites were only accessed by helicopter, which are some videos up here. So we would fly in and camp on weeks on end. This hiking is not your Adirondack hikes. It was pretty much a full body experience. You're climbing up waterfalls, sorry mom, crawling through mud and dense vegetation, carrying heavy gear, often in the pouring rain. The temperatures would range from 40 degrees at night to 70 during the day. And because these forests were at such high elevation, it was often 20 degrees cooler than that on the beaches. I was usually dressed kind of head to toe in rain gear, and instead of hiking boots, I often wore rain boots because of the muddy soils. My first remote field experience of Hawaii definitely came with some challenges, and I quickly learned how to be comfortable with the uncomfortable. I'm going to tell you guys a story. My first night camping in the forest, I woke up to a shadow outside my tent. I was so tired that I thought, oh, that's just my boss crouching outside my tent, which makes absolutely no sense, because why would anybody be doing that at 1 a.m. in the morning? They were also making these really weird growling noises, but then again, for some reason, I just said, oh, my boss is just angry about something. In the morning, I told my coworkers about it, to which someone told me that there were wild dogs on the slopes of Haleakala. They also went on to say that these dogs killed a man on the Big Island some years ago. I definitely didn't sleep well the next night. Sometimes in these remote places, you come across some pretty weird things. Hiking in Hawaii, we didn't have trails. We mostly have foot trails that were marked by a flag and tape tied around a tree and a GPS to navigate. So one day, we got off track and we stumbled upon crutches in the woods, in the middle of the woods. I stopped in my tracks, and after some literal digging, we found bottles, a tarp, a pair of women's shorts. They were pink and vintage, cooking items, and a bunch of other miscellaneous items. For all true crime listeners out there, we definitely did our due diligence, but it turned out to be an abandoned campsite, somehow several thousands of feet up in the middle of nowhere, a very cute pair of vintage shorts. And then these are the wedge-tailed shearwaters, which is a seabird. I've also worked with them when I was in Hawaii. So the next site that I've worked, so I worked in Alaska for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I was stationed on a remote island for 3.5 months in the summer studying seabirds. My main job was to document seabird breeding success, populations, and their diets. I lived in a small cabin, my small cabin, with one other person for the entirety of the 3.5 months. This position was logistically and very physically challenging. We spent a month before the season kind of preparing all of our gear and food and everything that we would have out there for 3.5 months. And then we also took a 2-day boat ride out to the island. We had one resupply of food and gear throughout the entire season. There were no refrigerators on the island, no running water, no showers. We had a propane stove and an oven and a very luxurious kerosene heater. Our produce was very limited, but was stored in a wooden compartment. So this is more of what the island looked like, very pretty. This was on a good day. Most of our meals consisted of canned goods like beans and pastas. Our water was filtered using stream water. And our outhouse consisted of a bucket system, which we would empty out into the ocean. We would also burn all of our trash on the island. And besides the cabin and the outhouse, we did have like a mini shower area where we could take bucket showers, often freezing cold. And we had a shed to keep all of our supplies in throughout the season. So yeah, super luxurious. This is a horned puffin. It's one of the puffin species. There's 4 puffin species in the world, and this is one of them. Our study sites were all across the island. Our days consisted of pretty long hikes, usually 5 miles, sometimes longer. We would only get 1 day off a week. And there were only foot trails to our main study site, kind of similar to Hawaii, but some required trekking across the island, requiring to use a GPS system and other maps to navigate. July was pretty rainy, and Alaska as a whole was quite cold and foggy for most of the summer. And the summers were pretty short, I think it was only like a week where it was kind of warm. The days were long, and the sun sometimes didn't set until like 1 a.m., which was kind of crazy, but the birds definitely made it worth it. So again, this is a horned puffin. It is in a crevice, which is kind of like a burrow in the rocks. It puts its nesting materials in there and lays its egg. And yeah, they will only lay 1 egg throughout the season. So yeah, they're pretty cool birds. Here's another picture of one. This is the rhinoceros auklet. It is in the puffin family, even though it says it's an auklet. But they're really cool. Something that we would do with them was collect diet samples. So again, when I was talking about our mist nets for capturing birds, we would set up a mist net out here and capture the rhinoceros auklets coming in to feed their chicks. And they would often have, I should mention that all puffins have what they call bill loads. So they will bring in food with in their bill, and their fish will kind of be hanging outside of its bill, and they'll fly in and kind of give their chick food, and what we would do is collect the food, so the chick didn't get fed that night, but it's okay. And then we would take the food and send it off to do some testing to really understand how the ocean is doing and other environmental factors and stuff like that. So these guys are burrow nesters, so they will dig a burrow. The horned puffins are mostly in crevices or rock crevices on this island, but they can be found in burrows as well. This is a tufted puffin. It's another puffin species. So this is 3 out of the 4 puffins. And they also will nest in rock crevices, but they will nest in burrows as well. So we'd go around and kind of just check what's going on in the burrow. That's pretty much our job, is to just kind of stalk birds. This is the parakeet auklet. They are also crevice nesters. They would lay only 1 egg. And I think you can hear the sound a little bit. I don't know, I'm trying to, hopefully it's heard a little bit, but yeah, they're very, their sound is very high-pitched and kind of bubbly. Another thing that's interesting about the auklets is that they smell like oranges, which is really interesting. I'm not really sure why, maybe food. But unlike the puffins, the parakeet auklet would actually regurgitate its food to their chicks, so they'll kind of like chew it up and vomit it into their chick's mouth. So that's pretty interesting about them. Here's another little video of the parakeet auklet. They're really cute. Sometimes we would hike across the island to visit the cormorant colony, which is pictured here. This would pretty much be an all-day thing in our survey, but it would only last for like 30 minutes. But it was pretty cool to see the entire island when we did that. This is a black oyster catcher. They lay their eggs on the ground. They can sometimes lay up to 3 eggs and will relay, which means that they can like relay a clutch of, or a set of eggs. And they're really hard to see, and you can easily step on them. So they're really cool though. Just kind of like on the ground is where they nest, which is super weird. Here we have the Leach's storm petrel. It is nocturnal. They're pretty cool. They kind of flutter like bats in the sky. We would be capturing them for diet samples as well. We weren't really successful with that, It was still super cool to try. And yeah, they smell like patchouli, which is really interesting. And they burrow underneath the ground and have very complex tunnel systems. And so this is just a video of me extracting a parakeet auklet from the net and then walking through all of the steps to collect samples. So you'd catch the bird in the net, extract it, and then get the samples and then write all the information down. So story time. There were no predators on the island, but there were sea lions. One day I went down to check rock crevices near the ocean where birds like puffins and auklets like to breed. And I was checking to see if one bird had an egg when I heard a ripple in the water. I looked over to see a tan blob emerging from the ocean, and I immediately grabbed all of my gear and booked it up there. A giant male sea lion arose from the water and started climbing up the rocks. It was quite scary how fast these big animals can move, even though they don't have like hands or feet. But they can definitely get to you very fast, so making sure that you run up the hill was really imperative. And another thing I wanted to highlight about Alaska is just how remote it is. Sometimes, you kind of be in your cabin at night and you'd see a light off in the water, and sometimes boats would be passing by, which is always kind of weird because it's so remote, but there'd be like fishing boats, sometimes tourist boats coming through. We'd also get really bad wind, sometimes gusts of up to 25 miles an hour would come through and it would shake our cabin. And we couldn't really do a lot of our research because we did some research on cliff sides. So if the wind was blowing too much, we could theoretically fall off the cliff. But yeah, so that's some interesting stuff about Alaska. And then the last kinds of birds I want to highlight are the common and thick-billed murre. And so these birds nest on the cliffs. They lay their eggs right on the cliff. And this video is a chick. When a chick leaves the nest or fledges, it will jump from the cliff and into the water. There it goes. And it will now spend the next several months with dad, who will teach it how to fish, how to hunt, all of that, while the mom kind of gets a break. And unlike a lot of other birds, like your songbirds, seabirds actually share responsibilities. So they share parental responsibility of the chick and of the egg, and they'll take turns feeding the bird, incubating or sitting on the egg, which is really interesting. So this past winter, I worked in Patagonia, Argentina. It was my first time being in the Southern Hemisphere. I was working with Programa Patagonia, researching the critically endangered hooded grebe. This species was not even discovered until the 1970s, when a group of researchers found this bird breeding in remote lakes on the mesetas, or plateaus, of Patagonia. There's actually only an estimate of 700 left in the wild due to their unique breeding habitats in snowmelt lakes. And you can kind of see the meseta right here. And this is the lake that we were on. And these are all kind of little lakes around the area. So yeah, pretty cool. So this is a snapshot of one of our tent camping. Our main grebe site was accessed by backpacking food and gear into the site and camping for weeks at a time. Supplies were brought in by the crew, and crews would often switch out and restock the gear. The challenges here were quite different than those of my other research experiences. Patagonia is very dry and windy, and our tents seem to suck up a lot of dirt. The high winds, so we'd often wake up with a layer of volcanic dust caked on our faces. We also faced very unpredictable weather when we were there, like high rain, sometimes even hail. But besides the weather, Argentina is obviously a Spanish-speaking country, and I don't really know a lot of Spanish. So the social challenges were pretty high for me. But I did find other ways of communicating through a lot of hand gestures, bonding over shared meals, and of course the pretty birds. So here's another picture of our tent site, and that's me wading through the marsh, where we were looking for an endangered rail species. And these are the grebes, the hooded grebes. This is where they nest. They nest using vegetation that they pile up, and it kind of like floats on the water, and they lay their eggs there. And then pretty much when the chick hatches, it will leave the nest almost immediately, and then the parents will kind of take turns feeding it. So that's what this video is showing. And there's Carson from earlier. And we would use scopes to kind of see what the birds are doing, and binoculars. And we would keep track of breeding success, how many times the chick is being fed. I think it just, it made a weird beep. Hopefully that's fine. That's good, okay. And I'll get into this, or I guess we'll see in a later video, but the grebes backbrood, which is basically where the chick will sit on the parent's back, which is really cute, and the grebe will swim around, and one parent will feed the chick on the other parent's back, and just kind of take turns. And when the parent is tired or the chick wants to get off, it will just flop in the water and jump on the other parent's back. So meat is pretty much the predominant food in Argentinian meals, and I've been vegetarian for most of my life, so coming to Argentina definitely took a bit of preparation, but let me tell you, I was definitely not prepared. Sheep were killed and brought to the field where we would eat it for weeks on end. And at a different field station, a pig was displayed and cooked over a fire where we talked and discussed a lot of conservation stories. Food was very much the primary ingredient in communication and a fantastic way to bond. Every last bit of the animal was consumed in Argentina. Pretty much nothing went to waste, and that was true with like clothing and shoes. It was kind of worn until it couldn't be worn anymore. And I reflected on this a lot. Definitely as an American, I feel like we waste a lot of things, and we just want to keep buying like new hiking stuff and whatever, but they kind of use it until the very last time that they can ever use it. I also got to experience a gaucho or rancher's way of life. They trained horses and herded sheep in the backcountry. I was very grateful to be invited into their homes and shared meals and all of that, and learning from their very simpler ways of life. There are definitely challenges I were not prepared for in Argentina, and the learning curve was very steep, especially not knowing a lot of Spanish. But I'm very thankful for this experience, for kind of pushing me outside my comfort zone for sure. And then, so this is the hooded grebe, and you can kind of see here the chick is right there. It's really cute. It just pops his head up, waiting to be fed. It's kind of an unusual. There's 3 adults and 1 chick, so it seems like one adult was just kind of hanging around, which is pretty unusual. I'm not sure why that was happening, but they're pretty cool species. And this is a silver grebe. They were also up there as well, only found down here. They would also breed on mesetas, but we were not there when they bred, but there would be a lot of them up there. And then this is kind of what it looks like. So we'd be like camping kind of down here, and then you'd have the lake up here, and then it's like the top of the plateau, so we would like hike up and do whatever up there. Pretty cool, but it was very, very windy. And so even down here, it could get pretty windy as well. So this is kind of what the grebes look like from afar. And you have a lot of them up there. You have the hooded silvery and then the white tufted grebe in this video. You'd also have other species like flamingos, which are pretty pretty cool. And then we also saw some petroglyphs, which is pretty neat. Just hiking around. This is like a dedicated natural, cultural site. But sometimes you'd see very faded ones when you're on the Mesetas. You'd also find a lot of arrowheads and stuff like that, which is really cool to find. But obviously not allowed to take them. Just kind of meant to be left there. Okay, moving on. This past summer, I worked in Maine as a supervisor on a remote island studying seabirds for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I oversaw a team of 4 and taught them how to ban birds, recite these birds, study breeding behaviors, and much more. Like I said earlier, with putting bands on the birds, like a little individual marker that has 9 digits on it. We would also put another band, it's kind of like a bracelet around their legs, and this would be called a field readable band, and it would have a series of 2 numbers and 2 letters, and we could see it kind of clearly in a scope, so we could better track that individual over time. So that's something that we would do. And so this is kind of what it looks like. This was kind of the least remote of my field sites, but it was a historic island, so it had a lighthouse, which is right here, and we would climb that every single day, or multiple times a day, to look at birds. And we also have a boathouse, a house, a shower, a heated shower, and several gear sheds. Definitely a bit of a luxury for me. But it also came with 12+ hour days, a lot of data management, walking, and possibly a haunted house, but that's unconfirmed. Our days would often start around 5:30 in the morning to capture when adults were coming in and bringing food for their young, and then we'd often end around 8 p.m. to put little tags or trackers on puffins to kind of see where they're going. So it'd be like satellite tags. And we'd see where they're going to get food, and then what they're bringing in. We would kind of correlate that. It was also the summer that I officially became a puffinologist. So I worked with all the puffin species in the world. So this is the Atlantic puffin. It's the last one on my list. It does look like it's going to bite my head off, but they're actually very nasty, even though they look pretty cute. So this is some more puffin pictures, because you can't get enough of them. And then these are the species I worked with in Maine. You have the murre, which I talked about earlier. They didn't breed on the Petit Manan Island, but they were kind of just around. Then we have the razorbills. They lay 1 egg, and they nest in a burrow or a rock crevice. But they unfortunately did not do well this year, and they didn't have any. Well, they had 1 chick, but then it died, unfortunately. And then we have the Arctic tern, which makes one of the longest migrations in the world. It goes all the way down to Antarctica, so pretty cool. And then we have the common tern. They go down to South America. And then we have the Leach's storm petrel. This is a chick. I showed you guys the adults earlier, so I wanted to show you what their chicks look like. And then this is a black guillemot. They nested in a lot of our artificial burrows, so a lot of storms would come through and wreck all of the burrows, so we would make new ones. So as a historic property, a lot of things can go wrong. One night, the foghorn at the lighthouse, which was supposedly shut down several years ago, started going off at 10 p.m. at night. It was the loudest sound I think I've ever heard in my life, and somehow it was louder in my room than the entire house. I could not sleep for the entire night, and I ended up calling my boss because I originally thought the noise was some part of an electrical problem, since there was a really bad storm that night. But she confirmed that something just went haywire. So the next morning I told my coworker about it, but she just ironically slept through the whole thing. She thought I was lying. But yeah, it was pretty crazy. But again, with a historical property, lots of things can go wrong. But it was pretty cool to work on a very historic old property. It was built in like the 1800s, so a lot of people have gone there and lived there and you know, gone up in the lighthouse and directed light signals, I guess. This is a Leach's Storm Petrel again, just so tiny. There's a common murre, just kind of flying up, meeting with another one. And this video is going to show you how you band a bird kind of quickly. So I'm first measuring the bird, getting its weight, and then getting a wing measurement. And then next I'm putting on the actual band. And then you use pliers and you kind of cramp it down. There's up close and personal. That's what the band looks like. And yeah, it's pretty quick. I think this whole thing, like in actual time, is like a couple minutes, maybe not even. But yeah, and all birds are banded and handled with federal permits, so definitely don't try this at home. That's illegal. And then, yeah, and then these are some of the up-close views of what kind of the blinds look like, and the puffins would often hang out. But you would go in here to view the birds and get band information, behavior information, all of that, without the birds actually seeing you. So you'd sit in there for a couple of hours with a scope and kind of scan and look for the birds. And then we would trap puffins. So when we went to go band the puffins and put the little metal bands on them, we would have these boxes, and there's a really dumb common tern standing on top of it. We would often get common terns. Where we would take, there's zip ties on them right now, but when we went to go band them, we would take these off and pull out these wooden dowels, and then the puffin would just stand on top, and then the lid would flip. We would like grab the puffin out to band it. And this is what the island looks like at night. And then this is actually from Newfoundland. We went there a little while ago, and these are all the puffins roaming about. Newfoundland houses the largest puffin colony in North America, so it's pretty spectacular. So yeah, over the last several years, I've learned to expect kind of the unexpected and be prepared for quite literally anything. These remote jobs are definitely not for the faint of the heart and require you to be on your feet at all times. I'm definitely very thankful for these rare opportunities, truly. And I wouldn't have had the ability to go to these unique places without these incredible opportunities. In the near future, I am looking to go south to work with seabirds in Antarctica or the subantarctics in whatever capacity that might be in. I know my mom's kind of nervous about that. But I'm most interested in what birds eat and where they go to find food. I'm also interested in breeding behaviors and using technology to monitor remote colonies. I'm also interested in entering into a PhD program with seabirds in the next couple years, hopefully with Antarctic seabirds. So if anybody knows anything about any opportunities in Antarctica, please let me know. With funding as a constraint right now, I have also taken the time to kind of focus on things I haven't gotten to do in a while, like work on my art and my writing. I also run the Rochester Owlman Club here, kind of a self-promoting. We only have 198 followers. We need like just 2 more to get to 200, so hopefully we'll get that soon. But yeah, we'll run these Owl Club events in a little bit, so hopefully we'll see you guys out there. And yeah, thank you so much for the Adirondack Mountain Club for hosting me, and I will gladly answer any questions, and I'll be around after to answer any questions too. And this is my contact information. I also have prints and everything at that table. If anybody wants to buy some prints, that would be awesome. They're unfortunately not study sites because I'm not allowed to sell anything from my jobs, kind of. But yeah, so definitely check that out. Yeah, thank you so much.
Folks, if you have a question for Rory, raise your hand. I'll bring the microphone over to you.
Two quick questions. First question is, who is funding you for these various trips? And second question, any interesting ghost stories while you were on that remote island in Maine?
Yeah. Well, so the funding, so you asked about funding and then ghost stories in Maine. So funding for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is through the government, but sometimes it's also funded by the Friends group. So part of my salary in Maine for the summer was funded by the Friends group. And they definitely rely on like donations from the public and all of that. Sometimes like the boats, a lot of tourist boats come in and they can sometimes help with that too. So a lot of it's just like public interest in a way. And ghost stories? I definitely was freaked out very much living on Maine. I definitely hear a lot of things, like a lot of creaks, but it was an old house. I don't think I definitely had like a specific ghost story, but I have lived in other haunted cabins. When I was in Colorado, I was living in a haunted like 1930s cabin, and my closet door would open in the middle of the night. It freaked me out. And I would go out at night at like 1 a.m. in the morning to capture owls. So you'd come back and it would be like really late and you're like freaking yourself out. But yeah, no real ghost stories from me, but that's a good thing.
Any other?
Were you able to get close to the birds without trapping them or netting them?
Yeah, great question. So this woman asked if I was allowed to get close to the birds without trapping them. And the short answer is yes, but it depended on the individual. So sometimes you'd go up, or like a group of birds, you'd go up and all freak out and fly away. But sometimes puffins, for example, are very curious. So if you sat there long enough, sometimes they would kind of come up to you. But it would only be in like certain scenarios. A lot of times when, at the kind of like the end of the season, when puffins and auklets, for example, will like fly in to give their chicks food, they kind of just don't care who's around. They just want to make sure their chick is fed. So if you're just kind of sitting there, they just will like come in. And the amount of times I was like in Alaska when I was looking in burrows, that a puffin would come in and like bump me because it was trying to get in its burrow so fast. It was crazy. But yeah, sometimes it would happen. But in order to like pick them up, we'd usually have to trap them. Yeah.
Yes. Comment.
We were fortunate enough to see puffins in an aquarium up in Seward swimming, and I thought that was fascinating to watch them, and they're pretty fast. I was curious if all the breeds are swimmers, or are there other birds that you've actually seen swim as well?
Yeah, so you asked if they're swimmers and if they're fast.
Well, you've seen them swim. I'm just curious if they're all swimmers, all types of...
Yeah, they all pretty much swim, so they like will dive to get their food, essentially. And yeah, all puffins, seabirds in general, they're all kind of swimmers, but some birds more than others will like, what we call them, rafting on the water, so they'll just be kind of like sitting on the water and like kicking with their little feet. but terns won't really do that. I'm not really sure why, but puffins will kind of like raft on the water and dive under to get their food, where a lot of like species like terns will like just get their food, like dive and just get their food. Sometimes they'll like bathe in the water. But yeah, they're pretty good swimmers, and they can use their feet and their wings and all of that to swim underwater. I think Cornell, the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, just put out a video of puffins swimming underwater, and it was actually at Petit Manan. They had I think it was like a snorkeler, and he put a puffin on top, like a fake puffin, on top of its head, and he'd like snorkel around to, you know, the puffin would like come up close, and he was able to capture like them swimming underwater. It's a pretty cool sight, so yeah.
We can't keep the questions on one side of the room.
Hi, Rory. The birds like the puffins, what are their natural predators?
That's a good question. So Luke asked what their natural predators are. I'm not really sure if they have like natural predators, but I guess like anything can really, like sea lions could potentially eat them. Obviously humans can be a natural predator. In Iceland, they actually hunt Atlantic puffins. It's like a very cultural thing that has been going on for a very long time. So obviously humans. Both indirectly and directly. Habitat destruction is obviously one thing. Plastic pollution, sometimes, you know, you'll do a dissection of a seabird and there'll be like plastic in its diet, which will unfortunately lead to death. But I'm not sure of any like direct predators other than like, you know, sea lions, you'll have whales. I'm not sure if seals will eat puffins or not, but yeah.
Rory, so you showed the pictures of the metal bands. Did you all use any kind of banding or other type of device that you'd be able to electronically track?
Yeah, so I mean, we use the satellite tags to track the puffins, and these are different. So there's different types of tags that you can put on birds, and for puffins, we use satellite tags. This actually connects with the satellites. Others will connect to another device, but this allows us to get really good data for like how far it goes out to sea, and then we can correlate that to kind of what species are bringing back. They kind of eat a lot of different species, but we saw sand lance was probably their most common fish species out there for Atlantic puffins. And yeah, so we use satellite tags, and they're sutured on. So we take a needle and we'll suture on, and it doesn't hurt the puffin or whatever, and it only stays on for a couple of weeks, I think. So it doesn't really, you know, bother the bird too much. But yeah, so that's what we use. Yeah.
Any other questions for Rory? Okay, well. Rory, great job. Great presentation. Okay, thanks everybody for coming, and hope to see you next month, if not sooner. Have a good evening, everybody.